In our previous episode, we came off of Imogene Pass, and then we went over Engineer Pass and Los Pinos Pass. We drove across the ranch and farmland on the other side of Los Pinos Pass and spent the night in a motel. Following day, we went to Great Sand Dunes National Park. On a whim, we decided to drive the Medano Pass trail and just had a great time. Even though it was raining, we made it up and over the Medano Pass. Then we came down the backside of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains and drove on to Raton, New Mexico. Following day, we drove from Raton to Durant, Oklahoma. In Durant, we visited Exploration Outfitters, where we finally got to see a Patriot X3 trailer in person. They also installed a Long Range America 24-gallon fuel tank on the 4Runner. After that, it was time to make our way back to Colorado to do the backcountry discovery route. We drove to Raton again, then from Raton to Alamosa to visit a friend, and then from Alamosa to Laramie, Wyoming, and lastly from Laramie to the beginning of the backcountry discovery route. We've just crossed the Colorado state line from Wyoming, and we are now on the Little Snake River Road and beginning the backcountry discovery route. The backcountry discovery route covers the length of Colorado north to south, starting at the Wyoming border and heading all the way to Four Corners. The northern part of the route is beautiful, but somewhat bucolic. On this part of the BDR, all of the land is privately owned, and there's really no camping anywhere. Who would have thought that you'd see a white Porsche sitting on the side of the road in the ranch land? And a couple of miles later, who would have thought you'd see another white Porsche by the side of the road out in the ranch land? South of Steamboat Springs by an hour or two, we found a campsite in a Forest Service campground that wasn't particularly full. Given the lack of available camping at all along the way, we felt really fortunate to find this place. So day one on the BDR went relatively well. We made 125 miles, the weather was good, and we were ready to move on the next day. The BDRs are actually set up for motorcycle touring, so it wasn't uncommon to see motorcycles along the trail. It wasn't too long before we came across our first historical building, the Rock Creek Stage Station, built around 1880. After driving across some high plains for a while, we started our descent into the Colorado River Valley. With our tight agenda, we had no time to stop and frolic in the water. Though most of the BDR is off-road, sometimes you just can't escape the pavement. For the remainder of the morning hours, we drove along the Colorado River. The morning hadn't even ended yet, and the monsoonal storms were starting to form today. A little past noon, we turned off the Colorado River Road and headed up a gulch that would eventually take us to the town of Gypsum. That monsoonal storm was getting bigger and darker, and the gulch we were driving up was basically a flash flood basin. We needed to make some time before things got out of hand. On the way up the gulch, we also noticed that there were smaller canyons on the driver's side that were also flash flood basins. And the storm continued to get closer and darker. We could really see the heavy rain coming out of it now. We were trying to go as quickly as we could safely, and hoping there was nobody coming the other direction that was as crazy as we were to be driving this gulch in this weather. We finally made it out of the gulch and up onto a mesa, and now we didn't have to worry about a flash flood coming down the road, just one crossing the road. We could see Gypsum in the distance and other signs of civilization. The BDR meets Interstate 70 in Gypsum. We decided to stop there and have lunch in a coffee house. And while we were there, the rain really came on. And looking at the radar, it wasn't going to let up all afternoon. And we had another canyon to go into outside of Gypsum. That brought an unexpected end to day 2. Unfortunately, we only made 80 miles that day, leaving us with 477 miles to get done in 3 days. The next morning, the weather was beautiful, and we were on our way. I spotted a blue heron out in the creek and tried to get a picture of him, but he flew away. He was nice enough to land in a tree on the other side of the creek where I could snap a picture of him. Fortunately, no signs of rain today. road got more interesting as we made our way up towards Crooked Creek Pass. Crooked Creek Pass was pretty underwhelming, but check out the drive on the other side of the pass. The road started to gain elevation as we were heading up towards Hagerman Pass at almost 12,000 feet. After a couple of days of relatively smooth driving, it sure felt good to be back up in the mountains again and have a few obstacles to go through and over. It was a beautiful day, and the views on either side of Hagerman Pass did not disappoint. Off in the distance was Turquoise Lake, and beyond that was the town of Leadville. After passing the Leadville area, we made a rather swift drive up to the top of Weston Pass. On our way down, we started looking for a place to camp, but most of the dispersed camping areas had broken glass, things like that in them, so we just kept on driving in search of that elusive, perfect campground. As it got near sunset, we didn't find the perfect campground, but this one sure checked a lot of boxes on the list. We had hoped we'd be somewhere around Buena Vista by the end of yesterday, but instead, we ended up tonight about 15 miles north of town. The only problem being, that's as a crow flies, not as the overlander drives. It was a good day, covering 105 miles, but we still had 372 to go. This was Sam's favorite campsite on the trip. We went out for an evening hike and watched a beautiful sunset. With 372 miles to go, it looked like our 5-day trip might turn into 6. Stay tuned for our next episode when we return to the San Juan Mountains, the Alpine Loop, and some of the finest scenery on the entire trip, right here on Adventure Beyond 60.